Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs. Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more of the Pokemon Adventures manga, where previously our heroes and our friends have all gone on separate journeys to find three specific things: the Rusted Sword and Rusted Shield, as well as Henry, who disappeared in the battle between Zacian and Zamazenta versus Eternatus. Having kind of lost his mind to Eternatus' poison, he coveted the Rusted Sword and Rusted Shield, getting in the way of their battle and disappearing along the way. Whereas Hot, Marnie, and Bade have headed to the Crown Tundra, they come upon Peony and Peonia, or Nia for short, a father and daughter respectively, who have a situation of sorts. Nia is determined to be independent, while Peony wants to spend as much time as possible with his sweet little girl, something I can understand all too well. And while Bade, having his own issues, especially as Peony, for some reason, resembles Chairman Rose, he seems to really take a shine to Peony. But Marnie, understanding Nia's need to just chart her own course, battles Peony and wins, with Bade deciding that, well, Peony has a knowledge of the Crown Tundra and could potentially help them find the Rusted Sword and Rusted Shield, as they join him on his venture to find the legendary mythical things of the Crown Tundra. Meanwhile, Casey and Marvin have managed to find Henry in the Isle of Armor at the dojo of Master Mustard. While Henry is a bit hesitant to join his friends, a little coaxing from Mustard allows him to understand that he wasn't in his right mind. Now that they've managed to find Henry, it's now Casey and Henry's duty to collect items for the antidote that helped to save Henry and bring it back to the gym leaders, who were also poisoned by Eternatus, a task sent to them by Oleana. Master Mustard also hands over the Pokemon Kubfu to Henry in the hopes that Henry will help raise the young one and help bring out its full potential. On their quest to find the poison, they're able to understand Kubfu a bit more, help Avery and Clara grow as people as well, and even evolve their Pokemon into Rillaboom, Cinderace, and my favorite of all, which I forgot to put up in the previous Pokemon video, Inteleon, during a scuffle to get the antidote. Things seem to be looking up, but what'll happen next? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, first of all, we pick up with Chapter 35, titled Boom Boom, Kubfu and Intense Training. We pick up with Casey, Henry, and Marvin, as Casey's got an alert on her tablet. She says, the drone scans are reacting to something. It has the same reading as the Rusted Sword and Rusted Shield materials. Henry and Marvin look around questioning, where is it? But then Henry questions something he sees. He points to something up the mountain saying, what's that? Casey says, a tower. And Marvin says, I thought the only buildings on this island were the railway station and dojo. Casey holds up her tablet saying, the sensor's picking up the reading in this area. The scanner filtered through the area and narrowed down the Rusted Sword and Shield materials and poison residue to slightly over 50% of the island. Marvin, looking a bit dejected, says, so we still have to search more than half the island. But Henry's not worried, saying, look on the bright side. At least we narrowed it down. It's starting to get dark out, so let's continue tomorrow morning again. Casey and Marvin both say, right. As they head back to the dojo, they shout, we're back. And it looks like they're just in time for dinner. As Hyde says, welcome back. And Honey says, you're just in time for dinner. As we see several of the students helping with the pots and plates. As they all sit down, Honey looks around saying, huh? Where are Clara and Avery? Hyde says, oh, yeah, usually they're the first ones at the table. Weren't you guys together? He says, turning to Henry and Casey. Henry says, they went to deliver the tree sap to the railway station, so we split up before noontime. Casey then brings out her rodent phone saying, oh, I got mail from Oleana. She says that the tree sap has been safely delivered and that they already produced an antidote. Look. Hyde reads the message saying, please give our heartfelt regard to the two aspiring gym leaders you told me about, the ones who delivered the extract to bolster their image. Oleana did not cut corners with that. Marvin hearing that says, those two are so obvious. Henry notes, still, we couldn't have found it without their help. Marvin, rather worrying, says, yeah, but still. Meanwhile, Honey shouts to Mustard, darling, how much longer are you going to play that video game? Sounds like my wife talking to me. As she ushers him off, she says, you're the dojo master. If you don't take your seat, then no one can start eating. Mustard says, my bad. But as they pass by the front door, they hear a thud. We see Clara and Avery knocked out, surrounded by some Slowbro, Galarian Slowbro. Honey says, my goodness, what happened to you two? They try to speak, but it comes out as nothing but pants, wheezes, and cough. Honey says, I don't understand. Oh, I won't understand if you don't say anything. But Mustard smiles, saying, Clara and Avery have restarted the first trial. Henry questions, the first trial? Mustard tells him, they need to chase the 3 incredibly fast Spellpoke I raised to beat them. These 3 stole Clara and Avery's dojo gis. Their trial is to chase them down, beat them, and get their gi back. Clara and Avery are still exhausted and barely getting anything out, but Mustard seems to understand, saying, ah yes, you're trying to say that today will be impossible, but you'll do it tomorrow. Do your best then. And everyone heads to the dinner table with Mustard saying, sorry to keep you waiting. Let's dig in, everyone. Meanwhile, at Hammerlock City Hospital, someone shouts, everyone who took the antidote woke up. Oh, okay, it's probably Sonia who said that. And Oleana saying, yes, they're currently gathered together. It seems the rate of recovery differs depending on the individual. Nessa, Raihan, and Leon can walk already, while Melanie and Piers can't. Although, Sonia questions, were there serious side effects? Eliana looks away, saying, nothing life-threatening, but... Uh-oh. What happened? As she stops at the door, she says, well, try not to be too shocked by what you see. Oh, was it the hair growth? As Sonia peeks in, she calls out to Leon and then immediately freaks out at what she sees. We then cut to the Crown Tundra at the Freezington Lodge, or rather, the Peony Exploration Team hideout. And it seems that Bade, Marnie, and Hop have all taken a shower. Oh, and we've got more Pecco. Hop comes over with his phone saying, I got a message from Sonia saying that the antidote worked. My brother and the rest are awake now. Bade smiles, saying, that's good news. She holds up the phone for everyone, saying she also sent me a photo. Marty steps in, saying, let me see. Although they freak out with Hop saying, what the heck is this? Yeah, sure enough. Everyone's got all this hair. I love Melanie hanging on to Nessa. That's actually kind of cute. Look, for some people, this amount of hair growth would be a godsend. We then cut to the Hammerlock City Police Station, where Swordward and Shieldbert also had it happen. It's draped over their faces. Swordward says, our noble hair is certainly overflowing, while Shieldbert says, surely people should be waiting to interview esteemed long-haired celebrities such as ourselves. We then cut to the next morning at the Master Dojo, where someone calls out, wait, please wait, as Avery and Clara are chasing them Slowbros, with Casey yelling out, good luck, Avery, Clara, good luck. Honey walks out and says, I guess those two feel more motivated now that you guys are around. Henry blushes a little, saying, you really think so? Honey says, yesterday's search for the tree sap seems to have excited them. It may not look like it, but amongst our students, those two were the most promising. But as a result, they stopped taking their training seriously. Darling and I were stumped on how to motivate them. They started off with pretty good results, but then they started slacking off, and we became worried that they would get bored of training. Yeah, I like that explanation. I think maybe that was in the game too. I'm not sure. But I like that, saying that, no, Clara and Avery do have the skills. It's just that they get too full of themselves too easily. I honestly like what the manga has done for these two's character, in my eyes. I always wanted more, mostly of Clara, because I played the game she was in. But I don't know. I feel more respect towards these characters than I did in the actual base game. Henry then calls back to Honey. Well, we should set off too. As Casey says, let's investigate that tower we found yesterday. But Honey has a serious look on her face. She questions, wait a sec, which tower are you going to investigate? Casey questions, which? Henry says, the tower at the top of that stairway. Honey, rather seriously, says, so, the Tower of Darkness. Henry questions, the Tower of Darkness? Honey thinks for a moment and then says, well, I guess it's fine for you to have a look. And Henry is left questioning this, asking, is there something wrong? Honey simply says, you'll know when you get there. We then cut over to the Tower of Darkness. As they stop at the top of the stairs towards the entrance, Casey brings out a drone saying, I'm going to check out the rooftop behind the curtains and the first floor with the drone. Henry says, sure. She sends off the drone. She calls out, first off, the rooftop. But as the drone nears the rooftop, he sees something lurking behind the figurehead at the top of the tower, and it immediately smashes the drone. The signal cuts off and the drone comes crashing to the ground, leaving Casey and Kubfu bewildered. Casey questioning, how? Suddenly, a figure appears at the entrance saying, please take that back with you. This tower is a place of training, built to aid Kubfu's development. Even if you try to get in from the roof, anyone without the necessary strength will not be permitted to enter the higher floors. Henry looks towards Kubfu as the person says, if you want to see what's up there, you will need to enter the tower with Kubfu and reach it through conventional means. Marvin calls out, come on, Galar is in the middle of an unprecedented crisis right now. Is this really the time? Can't you just let us through as an exception? Mustard approaches saying, well, this is a problem. Casey calls out, Master! In a ponderous mood, Mustard says, the life of a person, the life of a Pokémon. These are even more important than this planet. Yet these lives can only exist in the first place because of the existence of the planet. Does that mean it's okay to sacrifice the minority to save the majority? Is it okay to protect the lives of people and Pokémon, even if they may be responsible for a crisis? Despite my age, I am still unsure of the correct answer. Oh, waxing poetically, I see. Well, philosophically. I have experienced much, the life of a gym leader, a champion, and even running my own dojo. But there are levels you can't reach with mere practice, training, or discipline. Even if you copied my path, you could never become exactly like me. Exactly. See, that's why it's my belief that even if you were to make a clone of somebody, as life goes on, that clone would eventually become its own person because you'd experience things differently and to a different degree. Life is not a carbon copy for everybody. The bonds you form, the fortune that crosses your path, these are attributes that affect us beyond what we can comprehend as humans. I thought it would be interesting to observe that kind of thing. He then kneels down before Kubfu saying, you and Kubfu aren't close enough yet. You lack the strength to reach the top of this tower. However, there are other factors that should be taken into account when deciding a map, and so it should be fine for you and Kubfu to challenge it right now. You may be able to reach the top, he says, pointing towards the tower. Normally, I wouldn't ask you to fight this girl who gatekeeps the tower, but for now you must fight her. Sword, you will only be allowed to use Kubfu. It will be a 1v1 battle. Henry turns to Kubfu, questioning, Kubfu, are you okay? Kubfu, are you okay with that? And Kubfu gives a nervous nod. Mustard calls out, then begin. Kubfu gets into a battle stance as the girl barring the way. I wonder if she has a name. Random dojo student girl brings out an Impidimp, and the battle begins. Casey calls out, oh, what? No way. Marvin questions, what's wrong? Casey says, Impidimp is a dark fairy type. So as Kubfu lays into Impidimp, seemingly knocking it back, Impidimp manages to easily recover from the attack, taunting Kubfu. And Impidim's taunting just goes everywhere. Marvin gets angry, saying it's not working, and his face is so irritating. Impidimp seems to absorb the dark thoughts from Marvin. He powers itself up from it and unleashes Dark Pulse against Kubfu, leaving Kubfu staggered. Marvin questions, Dark-type moves should be very effective. Why is it doing so much damage? This has nothing to do with fortune. Kubfu's at an overwhelming disadvantage. He turns to Mustard saying, and why would you make it fight such a strong Pokemon. But Casey shuts Marvin's mouth, saying, Marvin, stop! You can't let yourself get so frustrated. Your negative feelings will just empower that Impidimp. Impidimp steps before the downed Kubfu, looming over it. As Kubfu struggles, Impidimp seems to take joy in its struggle and goes in with play rough, knocking out Kubfu. Mustard turns his back on Kubfu and Henry, saying, the match is over. What a shame. He goes to the student, saying, Heal Kubfu. She gives a battle stance, saying, yes, master. And Henry, Marvin, and Casey walk down the mountain. As he watches them leave, Mustard addresses the student, saying, sorry for giving you such an awful task. If I remember correctly, you're from... The student says, I come from Balloon Leah. Mustard says, I'm sure you wanted to let them through for the sake of your hometown. The student says, yes, however. Mustard questions the however, and as the girl whispers in his ear, he says, what? Really? Meanwhile, with Casey, Henry, and Marvin walking off, Marvin questions, can we go back to the dojo to fix the drone? Casey brings out a rodent phone, saying, doesn't matter whether we have the drone or not. I made a rusted sword and rusted shield detection app for the rodent phone. Let's just carry on as we were. Henry points to the distance, saying, then let's go to the other side of the coast through the training lowlands. We haven't been there yet. He then turns to Kubfu, saying, sorry, Kubfu, I put you through a bad experience. Kubfu turns away and towards the Taurus, and immediately goes in and battles it. Casey and Henry smile at each other, with Henry saying, we should keep facing forward too. Casey says, yeah. And so the sun starts to set. Everyone calls out, we're home, we're back. But then they're shocked by what they see. Oh, as both Clara and Avery now have their dojo uniforms. I don't think you actually ever see them in their dojo outfits. Yeah, you only see them in their gym leader challenger outfit. Oh no, you see it in Avery's rare league card. What about Clara? I think her rare league, yeah, it's just her in her bedroom. So no, you actually do see Avery in his rare league card in his uniform. Henry says, you finally finished the first trial. Avery says, I didn't want to demotivate Clara with my superior skill set, so I was holding back until now. While Clara says, what? I started later than you, but still found the training easy as heck. While you seemed like you would never move forward, I didn't realize you were holding back. Sorry for making you worry. As they gripe at each other, Mustard says, that's enough. The second trial begins tomorrow. Give it a rest. But then he notices something. Seeing Henry and Kubfu seemingly chatting to each other gleefully, Mustard thinks to himself, Kubfu is paying attention to Sword's expression, and Sword is watching Kubfu very closely. I suppose they're finally starting to bond after today's battle. And much is clear to see. We then cut to late at night, where Kubfu sneaks out of the dojo and takes off. This makes its way to the Tower of Darkness, racing up the banner, making its way to the very top. But as it arrives, he sees nothing behind the figurehead at the top. He looks around intently, but finds nothing. But then something catches his notice. Atop the figurehead, he spots something. I actually kind of like how much really we're going into this whole Isle of Armor stuff. The Isle of Armor DLC was such a... what's the word I'm looking for? It was so straightforward that I didn't actually expect us to take so much time and effort to the development of Kubfu, but that's the whole point. The development of Kubfu. Like, Kubfu is like the big thing about the Isle of Armor. So I'm actually kind of glad that we're spending the time on that. Even though it kind of brings the plot a bit to a slower pace. Like, no, look, Kubfu plays as much of an important plot point Kubfu plays. I'm actually very curious how far that plot relevance will go in terms of the finale of the overall story. Because dedicating this much time and effort, like, man, Kubfu better really play some major important roles to the overall plot line. Alright, the next chapter we pick up is chapter 36. serious tower battle. We pick up with Henry awakening in his bed next to Marvin, who's still asleep. As he gets up, he looks around and notices something. He says, as he gets up, he questions, huh? Where's Kubfu? He whispers. He makes his way out of his room and immediately trips on something. Oh, is Casey sleeping right outside his door? As Casey questions, that's Hat. Henry says, Shield, why are you sleeping in a place like this? Suddenly someone addresses them saying, to keep an eye on Sword and make sure he wouldn't sneak off to the tower, right? Enter the Master Mustard and the Gatekeeper, I guess we'll just call her Gatekeeper, who's holding an injured Kubfu. Henry says, Master, the Gatekeeper too, and Kubfu? Mustard says he tried to climb to the top of the tower in order to look for the rusted sword and shield. Casey says, I didn't notice at all. Mustard says, I know they say that Pokemon resemble their trainers, but for it to have the same idea as Sword, and even beat him to it, it seems like you two are getting along better than I expected. Casey says, sorry for doubting you, Sword. Henry says, Shield, you don't have to apologize. After all, you were right not to trust me. Mustard says, I'm the one who should apologize. They wouldn't have acted like this in the first place if it wasn't for me. Henry questions, what do you mean? Mustard explains, saying, I should have told you that the rusted sword and shield aren't actually in the Tower of Darkness. Casey and Henry say, what? The Gatekeeper says, as soon as I found out why Casey came here, I got the students and the Pokemon inside the tower to look through every nook and cranny. However, Mustard says, when I first heard about it yesterday, I was surprised as well. Casey says, you should have just told us that from the start. Mustard says, my bad. But if I told you, I thought there wouldn't be any point to Sword training. Henry questions, training? Casey says, Sword? Don't you mean for Kubfu? Mustard says, when Sword flew over here and I heard about the details of what happened, I felt like I had to get involved. I wanted you not to lose sight of those who are important to you when years are involved. The purpose of your training, okay, I think that's a misspelling. The purpose of our training you was to help you control your impulses, rather than letting your impulses control you. I like that explanation. Then there's Kubfu, who doesn't know anything about the outside world, and doesn't know how to behave. But even that same awkward Kubfu knew that in order to change, he couldn't just keep to himself and stay within his comfort zone forever. Sword, you were always a person who wanted to help people in trouble, weren't you? But through your impulsive actions, you upset the people important to you. I think if you can keep that experience in mind, it will serve as a deterrent next time. Henry says, I wonder if I can stop myself. I've reflected on what I've done so much, yet even then I can't help myself, just like tonight. Mustard says, I have seen many who've relied only upon themselves. Even when others did help them, they still weren't able to realize their own weaknesses. Self-discipline requires effort, even if it's hard. When push comes to shove, you need to have the power to rely on those around you. That is actually an incredibly insightful lesson that no matter what age you're at, is like, look, it's good to have your own personal strength, but having people you can rely on who understand your weak points, and even if you've made mistakes, are willing to help you move past them, can be a very crucial thing in life. Even when it comes to people with anything, say, addiction or mistakes that they've made or things that they've done, even if it's a crime, having people around you who can help you move forward and move past that kind of stuff, that's very important. As someone who's made a lot of mistakes, I don't think I could have actually stopped being the kind of person who did bad things if not for the people around me, if not for friends, family, and all of the above. Casey slaps Henry on the back, saying, that's right, Sword. When you can't control yourself, I'll stop you with all my might, so don't worry. We then cut to the next day. As they head out, Casey, Henry, and Marvin, Henry points to something in the distance, saying, there it is, Tower of Waters. Casey calls out, just so you know, the students inside the Tower of Waters already looked for the sword and shield, but didn't find them. Henry says, right. Marvin then questions, the last part of the training is to choose which tower you want to challenge, right? Casey turns to Marvin saying, they told us that the tower we chose decides which style he'll fight with and which type he'll become. Marvin turns to Henry saying, have you already decided which one, Sword? Henry says, no, not yet. We'll go with whichever one Kubfu prefers. Kubfu turns to the Tower of Darkness and remembers everything he went through previously. The beatdown. And we then cut to Kubfu training against the Braviary. The narration reads, Sword's training and the search for the sword and shield continued. After days of searching, the sword and shield were still nowhere to be found. And so, Kubfu's training was coming to an end. We then cut to inside the dojo, where Kubfu confronts Mustard, as Mustard says, ah, yes, it seems you two have really gotten close to each other. He has grown very honest and strong. How wonderful. Between the towers and of waters and darkness, which style have you decided on? Kubfu says something, and Mustard says, it seems like you have already decided. In each tower you will find 5 strong people, 1 on each floor. I'll be looking forward to seeing you two at the top. We then cut to the next morning, with Henry and Casey and Marvin heading out. Henry says, okay, Kubfu, we'll follow you to the tower that you want to go. As they head off, Marvin says, that way is... Henry says, yeah. Ah, the Tower of Waters. I went for the Tower of Darkness, just so you know. The gatekeeper of the Tower of Waters says, this is the Tower of Waters. You won't be allowed to leave until you beat the 5 users of the style or get defeated trying. Also, after this, you won't be allowed to challenge the Tower of Darkness under any circumstance. Are you certain that you want to challenge the Tower of Water? Henry turns to Kubfu and Kubfu gives a nod. The gatekeeper says, it seems like your heart is set. The best of luck to you. As the doors opens and he ushers them inside. Henry says, I'll be going now. And Casey says, in a very calm voice, we're going to investigate the areas we haven't explored yet. And so, the two enter the tower. As Henry comes upon the guardian of the first floor, or I'm not really sure. I guess student of the first floor? Yeah, I guess student of the first floor master. First floor master. He says, rain falls to become a river, and the river will eventually flow into the ocean. Henry thinks to himself, is that the gatekeeper of the Tower of Darkness? He continues on saying, such is the great cycle of water. It will swallow you whole. Henry then thinks, I guess not. He then holds out his hand saying, can you please wait for a bit? She's taken off guard. It's just like, you interrupted my whole monologue, saying, you know you can't back out now. Henry questions, are you allowed to use healing items and change your held items before the battle starts? The Guardian says, yeah. Henry then goes over to his bag and then says, well then, let's begin. The Guardian, now angry, thinks to herself, seriously, after interrupting me like that, you're just going to move on by yourself? He then sends out her Psyduck and has it use Zen Headbutt against Kubfu. Psychic attack. Kubfu is launched into the air, manages to recover his footing, much to the Guardian's surprise, and uses counter to knock back the Psyduck, instantly KOing it. Oh, it had a berry. As Kubfu leaps into the air and a berry falls off of it, the Guardian says, a Payapa berry? That reduced the effect of Zen Headbutt by half. But why did you think I would use a Psychic-type move? Henry simply says, this is an examination hall for Kubfu, which is a fighting type. So I predicted that effective types like flying, psychic, and fairy moves would be used for sure. On this floor, the cuts on the wall were from a flying-type move, caused by someone who used aerial ace on a Kubfu. Plus, the other day at the Tower of Darkness, we lost to an Impidimp in a practice match which concentrated on using super effective moves. The Guardian smiles, saying, so that's why you took measures for psychic-type moves. He gives a bit of a salute, saying, splendidly done. Henry then says, well, places like this usually like to pull stuff like that. It was predictable. The Guardian gets a little bit pissed off at that. It's just like, I was trying to compliment you, man. She then thinks to herself, Master did say, and she remembers Master Mustard's words, the kid is a bit of an airhead and can be rude. Don't let him throw you off. She then thinks, or something. Well, he threw me off. The psychic-type move I used right off the bat didn't work at all. She then tells him, please proceed, the two of you. Henry says, thank you. And as he heads up to the second floor Guardian says, in a round cup, water becomes round. In a square teapot, it becomes square. Henry thinks to himself, more cryptid saying? But he continues on. On the second floor, he fights Kubfu fights a Krabby. On the third floor, he fights a Zuru? I always remember Meryl. Oh, no, it's just a Meryl. Okay. It kind of looked like a Zuru. On the fourth floor, he fights it's one of my favorite Pokemon. Why am I forgetting the name? Poliwrath. Really? A Poliwrath? That looks more like a Poliwhirl. I don't know. I think the... I'm looking at the wiki and it's telling me that these Pokemon are this, but it's just like, no, that doesn't look like a Poliwrath. That looks like a Poliwhirl. The guardian of the fourth floor says, "Splendidly done. Your ultimate foe awaits. Please proceed to the final floor." Henry, rather absent-mindedly, says, "Ultimate foe? You mean Master Mustard, right? Why are you being so dramatic about it?" Taken off guard, the fourth floor guardian just pushes Henry up the stairs, saying, "Please proceed. Go." As Henry gets to the fifth floor, the final floor, Mustard laughs. "It seems like you found me out. You both did well to make it this far, Sword and Kubfu." Ooh, he's doing it! "Let me be the one to teach you the final lesson of the essence of water." He then leaps from the stack of pillows he's sitting on, takes off his jacket and hat, revealing his battle attire, and with the intensity of a great martial arts master, Master Mustard is at the ready, saying, "Come at me with everything you have." He unleashes a Pokeball, saying, "Come forth, Urshifu!" And I believe this is Single Strike type. Yeah, because he always has the Urshifu opposite to your Urshifu, which is the evolved form of Kubfu, if you didn't know. Just so you know, I went for Single Strike style. At the Tower of Darkness. Do I want to put Urshifu in my favorites? Urshifu was one of my better Pokemon, even towards the late game. Like, despite having it fostered upon me because of the nature of the game, Urshifu did end up being one of my better Pokemon in the long run. Get in here, Urshifu. Single Strike style. I do, in fact, like Urshifu. He's kind of cool. Also, Dark type. I'm a sucker for a Dark type. Which really got me because it's just like, oh, you can either go for Dark or Water type. It's like, I like both types, damn you! But seeing Urshifu, Kubfu is immediately shocked. Henry sees this, saying, "Kubfu is trembling." Master Mustard simply says, "I'm not surprised. When Kubfu went to the Tower of Darkness, he was knocked out in a single blow by this Pokemon. That's why Kubfu chose the Tower of Water instead. This is the evolved form of Kubfu after learning the secret arts of darkness, Urshifu. And now you shall face the one who beat you once again." I gotta love in the standoff. Well, no, I do kind of want to see a bit of this. It was getting intense. But meanwhile, at the Crown Tundra, Marnie Hoppenbade had finally made it to the Dinah Tree Hill. Peony was still asleep because of the previous night, because the mayor kept trying to push Breezington's extra boat-neck sweatshirts onto him, which had been made in an attempt to revitalize the town. Yeah, that sounds about right. What? We yada-yada'd over the legendary Titans? Oh, come on, man. Dude, I get it. That's not the important part, but we yada-yada'd over the 3 Titans? Dude, you could have done something with that. Well, actually, then again, this isn't the first appearance of Regirock, Regice, and Registeel, right? No. We've dealt with the Regis before in the manga. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. There it is. Okay, yeah. Okay. Battling against Kyogre and Groudon and Sapphire and Ruby and Sapphire. There we go. Right. This would have to be a completely different Regirock, Regice, and Registeel because I'm pretty sure Brandon ultimately owns the ones that were over in the other region. And that's just kind of wild. The 3 had already discovered the strange ruins where the roaming Titans slept. They explored the 3 legendary ruins where they found the legendary Titan, and from the 3 ruins they captured the legendary Registeel, Regirock, and Regice. To have one panel that tells you that kind of undercuts how legendary they are, let's be honest. But that is kind of... It is the bummer nature of capturing previous legendaries in DLC because they tend to be kind of made superfluous a little bit. I would have at least liked a little bit more grandeur to taking on the Reggies. In addition to searching for the rusted sword and rusted shield, they also explored the 3 mysteries that Peony entrusted them with. And now finally they had arrived at the Dyna Tree, spoken of in the legend, which was where they were supposed to find 3 legendary Pokemon flying around. Hop says, this is the tree of the legendary Pokemon. Bade then questions, and? Is there any reaction towards the rusted tools? Marnie, looking at her rodent phone, says, none. Wait, there it is. Hop says, seriously? Marnie states, it's moving, and it's close by. Hop looks around, questioning, could it be with the legendary flying Pokemon? Marnie points to something flying in the distance, saying, it's here, as they see Galarian Moltres. See, at least they're giving the newer Pokemon a little bit of grandeur. I'm like, man, put some respect on the Reggies, man. But they're not Hoenn Reggies, so I guess there's a bit of a difference. Or, no, Sinnoh. Oh, no, it's Hoenn. It's Hoenn. It was the Hoenn region. But yes, Galarian Moltres comes from down on high. Oh, they're doing the whole cutscene. It is kind of a bummer that it's not Henry and Casey here, but I'll take these guys. Suddenly, they hear something running up behind them. Hop turns saying, what? As Galarian Zapdos comes racing through, clashing with Moltres. The two have a standoff. It's a fight on sight. Hop questions, which one has it? Marnie says, I don't know, but it's strange. There should be a bigger reaction now that they're so close by. Hop questions, what do you mean? Marnie states, if it's as if there are traces of the metals and poison on their bodies. Bade behind them then states, so we know that they touched either the rusted sword or shield, and that some residue must have been left over. Suddenly, they notice something flying above them, and it's Galarian Articuno, with Hop saying, there's another one. Oh, man, y'all making Galarian Articuno seem even more intense in this one. Well, honestly, Galarian Articuno is kind of freakishly intense. It's kind of wild because, I'll be real, I think they're a lot cooler than their original counterparts. It's one of those situations where, oh, you kind of improved on an original design. Nice. Hop says, so basically, it means one of those 3 knows where it is, right? Okay then, let's catch them and make them lead the way. So as the 3 legendary birds stand off, each of the 3 kids race to one of them. Hop goes for Moltres, saying, I'll get the flamey one. Bade, you get the one in the middle. As Bade goes for Articuno, he questions, which one is that? And what do you get to decide anyway? Marnie heads for Zapdos, saying, then that leaves the spiky one for me. Okay, going after some legendaries. Cool. I am kind of happy they split it up in the long run, though, just because it kind of keeps things a bit fresh, and you don't have to kind of be pigeonholed to either plot or the nuances behind it. I just preferred the Crown Tundra as a whole because it had so much more going on than the Isle of Armor, and kind of skipping over some of it is kind of a bit of a bummer. But the fact that this is taking multiple days, it's like, yeah, it makes sense, because with everything you have to do in the Crown Tundra, it's like, yeah, I can believe that it would take a few days of exploration to kind of get everything you need. Whereas with the Isle of Armor, multiple days would mostly just be spent training up Kubfu. There's a bit of a method to the madness, as it were. The last chapter we'll be looking at is chapter 37, titled Crackle! Retrieve the Sword and Shield. Okay, yeah. I do like the time we've given to the Isle of Armor, but I do hate that we've kind of rushed a bit through the Crown Tundra. Alright, a cool cover page. They just gotta reuse that shot of Kubfu and Urshifu standing off. But back on that, Kubfu and Urshifu stare each other down. As Urshifu goes in for a strike, Kubfu narrowly manages to dodge it. Seeing an opportunity, Kubfu goes for a strike at Urshifu's leg. Master Mustard thinks to himself, he's closing the distance. Now we have to step in lower to get to him. How troublesome. Yeah, that's true. Anyone who's played a fighting game knows that height differences in a fighting game can suck. Rather than competing in raw strength, he decided to whittle us down with a barrage of hits. he can't dodge the attacks, so instead he takes the attacks in a way that minimalizes the damage. Yeah, it's actually smart fighting play. Back when he tried sneaking into the Tower of Darkness, his attacks were thoughtless. He couldn't even graze him. After how one-sided his defeat by the hands of Urshifu was, shouldn't he have become more hesitant? However, Kubfu's now backed into a corner by Urshifu. As Mustard thinks, however, he's cornered. How will he escape this? He tells Urshifu to use Wicked Blow, and it seems like Kubfu takes the hit full on to the face. My God. He does take it full on to the face. Davis just caved the little guy's face in. But even though Kubfu goes down, he gets back up. Henry then tells Kubfu to use Aerial Ace, but Urshifu just takes the hit. Mustard ends up thinking to himself, he used a super effective move. But Kubfu's strike was weak. On the other hand, he has to ward off Urshifu's heavy strike, but even so, he must overcome them. Kubfu may have gotten more hits in, but he's still taken more damage. He also took a wicked blow head-on. His body must be very wounded. The only way he can turn this situation around is by using counter, but he would need to take another attack, which he won't be able to withstand. So what are you going to do? Mustard commands Urshifu to once again use Wicked Blow. The Kubfu seems to move in. It looks like he's about to do a Dempsey roll. Mustard's shocked, thinking he's moving right in front of it. Henry has Kubfu use Aerial Ace on Urshifu's leg once again, the same leg he's been attacking this entire time. And the pain from the attack has finally given in, causing Urshifu to stagger and fall right into the waiting Kubfu, who Henry has used close combat, mostly with an uppercut that utterly just rattles Urshifu, leaving him slumped on the floor. Nice, Mustard declares, splendidly done. You swiftly moved in to throw us off and concentrated on damaging our pivoting foot, right? Henry says yes, there was simply a difference in reach. We targeted Urshifu's foot and took advantage of the moment he became careless. Although we didn't use counter, using the momentum of your fall in close combat, with Urshifu's entire body behind it, was just as effective. Mustard bursts out laughing. Sword, you have raised Kubfu well. In the battles until now, he used to only rely on brute force when he attacked. He took a lot of hits and made a lot of wasted movements, which all drained his stamina. Urshifu looks a little embarrassed at this, but as Mustard recollects all of this, he says, but when he got defeated by Urshifu after sneaking into the Tower of Darkness, he stopped being so reckless. That's why he started off with this tech, so he could learn his opponent's movements and adjust accordingly. That way, even if he did take a hit, he wouldn't tire out so quickly. To return what comes to you like the waves of the sea, you have come to the realization that truly fits the essence of water. You have successfully acquired the style. Very well, the time has come. Mustard then gestures to the scroll behind him, saying, O Kubfu, behold this scroll of water. As Kubfu observes it, the picture seems to come alive. The waves seem to crash before Kubfu, and in an instant, Kubfu evolves into Urshifu, Rapid Strike style. Or Surging Strike. Oh, yeah, Rapid Strike for that. Urshifu is now beholden in his awesome new visage and his increased height. As Mustard Smiley says, you have now acquired the ultimate technique of water, Surging Strikes. Your new form is Urshifu, Rapid Strike style. Aw, I love this little moment. With the two Urshifu at his back, Mustard says, thank you, Sword. It's thanks to your help that we got this far. And he says, no, it's fine. Though I didn't really have the time to change myself. Mustard laughs at this. He says, and now you're free to search for the rusted sword and shield as much as you like. Henry makes for the exit, saying, thank you, please excuse me. Urshifu seems to be aghast as he starts to tear up at Henry leaving, with the other Urshifu patting him on the back. Mustard turns to him, saying, you want to go with him? That depends on if Sword is okay with it. Still, Sword is pretty cold, huh? He just left without even saying anything to you. Only for Henry to have made it back up the stairs saying, Mustard says, did you forget something? Henry says, Kubfu, no. I mean, Urshifu, is it okay if I take him with me? I mean, my training isn't done yet. I think Henry kind of assumed that Urshifu was just gonna come with him naturally, and then he knows, oh, he's not following me. Can I take him with me? Yeah, it's like, look, after everything he's been through, having a powerful Pokemon like that is actually pretty good. Mustard pauses a little bit taken aback and says, as long as Urshifu's fine with it, and Urshifu's already gone. As Henry and Urshifu make their way out of the Tower of Water, he gets on his Rotom phone asking, Chili, where are you right now? Shield says, we're at the lagoon. We have a problem, so come quick. As they make their way over, they wave to each other, Henry calling out, hey, and Casey jumping in the air saying, over here, Sword. But as she spots Urshifu, she says, is that Pokemon Kubfu? And he says, yeah. And Casey gets all teary-eyed saying, he's grown up so much. And Urshifu just smiles. Henry then questions, more importantly, what's the problem? Casey declares, we found it. We actually found it. The rusted shield. And he says, what did you just say? Casey brings out a tablet saying, look, before we got a reaction when we arrived there, right? Henry says, yeah. So we started looking into the sandbank, and the reaction means that the shield is definitely over there. As Henry looks over, he says, the rusted shield. How are we supposed to get there? Marvin brings out his Dracovish, right? Yeah, Dracovish, saying, let's ride Draco. And they all do just that. Oh, that's right! I forgot! Each of the legendary birds make their way out to different parts of the region. And you find Galarian Moltres at the Isle of Armor. Oh my god, I forgot! Even though I completed the DLC to this not even that long ago. Oh, that's funny. I completely forgot how it all ties in. That's why it was better to have them not leave the Isle of Armor, because you end up encountering them either that. It all comes together. That's actually pretty good. As they make their way over to the little islet, Casey spots something saying, what is that? As Galarian Moltres comes flying over with Hop clinging to its leg. That is amazing. I love it. I love it how it came together. That is amazing. I love how this came together. That is funny. That is so funny. Casey calls out, Hop! And as Hop spots her, he ends up letting go, falling to the ground, which he was that far above. As he staggers a bit, Casey comes rushing over saying, are you okay? Hop says, exhausted, I can't muster any strength. Casey calls out, you said that you were investigating the legend in the tundra. Why are you here? Hop points to Moltres saying, it's because of that thing. The 3 legendary Pokemon appeared and got a reaction. One of them touched the rusted sword and shield. The 3 of us tried to catch one each. It looked like they were trying to run away, so I grabbed hold of his leg without thinking. Henry questions, and it flew all the way here? Casey looks at a tablet saying, hey, I'm getting a reaction from the tree where that Pokemon is perched. The rusted shield is definitely on that tree. Hop then questions, was he hiding it? Casey says, I guess so. That Pokemon probably found the shield somewhere on the island and put it in its nest. But because it looked like we were going to find it, he probably decided to hide it in that tree. Henry immediately rushes in, only to be restrained by Urshifu in a full Nelson. Casey says, good job, Kubfu, or rather, well, Henry's just struggling in its grasp, saying, let go, Urshifu. Casey calls out, Marvin, make sure that Pokemon with the shield doesn't escape. And Marvin brings out his... I remembered it this time. Inteleon! I'm kind of bummed that ultimately the Inteleon went to Marvin. Not that Marvin is a bad character after all this time. It's just, it should have went to Hop. I would have at least accepted it going to Hop. One Pokemon always kind of gets the shaft in terms of importance. But going to the OC character just got like, dang. But Marvin calls out, yeah, Sniffler, Snipe Shot. I mean, it's a fire type, so... Oh, wait. Oh, that's right. Galarian Moltres isn't fully a fire type. Galarian Moltres is dark flying. That's right. It's very deceptive looking. Hop says, Marvin, that guy might be all fiery, but he isn't a fire type. Marvin says, really? Hop then brings out his Pinchurchin and says, I challenged it with Cramorant, but it didn't do so well. But since it's a bird Pokemon, I think Rock and Electro moves should work. So as Hop brings out Pinchurchin, Casey brings out Toxtricity. Hop has Pinchurchin use Zing Zap, while Casey has Toxtricity use Overdrive, which I think is Overdrive Toxtricity's signature move? I think so. Oh, and sure enough, Galarian Moltres has the Rusted Shield. Henry is shocked, saying, the shield! Marvin then has his Dracovish use Ancient Power, which immediately downs Moltres. Urshifu jumps in to grab the shield, but Henry tells him to stop, saying, we can't leave it out in the open like that. He immediately brings out a blanket, wraps the shield, but Moltres seems pissed, immediately goes in and grabs Henry. Oh god, Henry's been kidnapped again! And flies off. Casey calls out, Sword! Hop calls out Henry. And well, Marvin calls out Sword. Still clutching the shield, Moltres takes Henry over the water. That's Henry saying, whoa, why are you? Oh, what's good? Is it because of the poison? Because just as Moltres makes it back to the mainland, he starts to tire and falls just short. Henry saying, you're kind of struggling, are you alright? They begin to plummet from a cliffside towards the sea. Henry saying, huh? This is not the place to run out of strength. So he unleashes his Pokemon, Girder, who slams his Girder into the wall, managing to catch both Henry and Moltres. As Henry makes his way onto the steel beam, he says, you're a lifesaver, Stealer. Oh! Henry then brings out a Max Revive, saying this should fix you up, and gets Moltres back to health. Oh, cool to see that. But Moltres hangs around Henry. Henry turns to Girder, saying, is he telling me to hold on? Girder gives a nod, and Henry grabs a hold of Moltres' leg. Moltres then brings Henry fully onto the land, and Henry drops off and Moltres takes off. I guess... Oh, okay. I was wondering how he would tie into this. There it is. I guess no catching the Galarian legendary birds then. As Henry makes his way through the snow. Okay, so he ended up back in the Crown Tundra. He says, clutching the rusted shield, it's great that he dropped me off, but somehow it feels like I can't muster any strength. Hop said the same thing. Is it a consequence of touching that Pokemon? Oh, they have something in them that drains your strength too, just like some of the other legendaries. Actually, this makes sense, because what this Pokemon needs is someone who can fix equipment. It all comes together again. Because as Henry makes his way, he sees the figure of something with a big old head in the mist. The figure seems to beckon Henry closer. Henry questions, huh? Is it calling me? As he makes his way towards the creature, it seems to vanish. Henry says, it disappeared. But once again, he sees the creature in the distance. He says, wait up! He once again pursues, only for the creature to seemingly be over a knocked out Bade. Henry says, Bade, hang in there! He makes his way over to Bade and nudges him. Bade starts to awaken and questions, why are you here? Later, Henry is falling behind the Bade, who is just grumbling to himself something awful. As he says, to think I would be stuck here alone with you. It would have been better if you were a hallucination I was seeing before freezing to death. Henry calls out, Bade, there are a lot of things I want to ask. Though an angry Bade says, shut up! Once we reach the hideout, I'll explain everything. So be quiet and follow me. Henry stops for a moment and then says, a hideout? Which takes Bade a little bit off guard. Good! They get to meet Peony! As they arrive at the base camp, Bade says, excuse me, I'm back. Peony calls out, oh, Captain! How did it go? And then he spots Henry saying, who's this lad? Bade says, the tool meister I told you about before. Peony says, wait a sec. He then starts to glare at Henry. Henry says, what's wrong? Peony says, that good guy act of yours, I don't like it one bit. Oh? You remind me of someone who I don't get along with at all. Get the hell out of here right now. Oh, is he saying it's like Rose? Oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that. That is an interesting way of capping this off. With Peony, one of my favorite characters, just being like, I don't like the face. I'm kind of assuming why he's like that, though, and it makes a bit of sense. I wonder if they'll actually dive into the familial connection. But that was actually fun. I love the way everything kind of flows together. It all just kind of works out in the end, and I kind of like how everything worked out. I don't appreciate what she did with the Reggies, and there's only one volume left, so I don't know. Is it enough time to really bring this finale to a good conclusion? Because I gotta say, the way Sun and Moon was going, it was going pretty damn solid, and then you got to the end and it just felt like, oh, we rushed that ending a little too much. Just you just kind of rushed through the ending, and it was so good. It was so good, and then that ending hit, and like, oh, that wasn't quite it. That needed a little bit more time to cook. But I'm interested to where we go from here on out. I liked how the whole storyline of the Crown Tundra went. Can we wrap things up for how the story of the Isle of Armor went? Can we wrap up the story of the Crown Tundra? Because you still have the King of Bountiful Harvest. You still have the other legendary birds. There's a few titans we did not address. And then there's wrapping up everything with Eternatus and Zacian and Zamazenta. That's a lot to wrap up. And I don't want us to just rush too fast through everything else. That's my only kind of worry here. Because that stuff with the Reggies kind of got me on guard. I was loving everything else, but that yada yada over the Reggies, either that's going to pay off immensely, and it's like, I'm glad we sacrificed the time of getting to read, learn, and understand the Reggies to kind of do something else. And not to mention, we know the Reggies can be captured. To having good trainers like, I wonder who got what, because they said Marnie and Bade got the Reggies. Who got which Reggie? I feel like, well, considering who went after which Pokemon, I guess Registeel went to Marnie, Regice went to Bade, and Regirock went to Hoff. That wouldn't be too bad, all things considered. But I am very curious about where all that could go. And that would tie into a lot of things, because the Reggies have the connection to Regigigas. Could that end up drawing Regigigas there? And thus bringing Diamond. Pearl. No, Diamond, yes, Diamond. And that brings along Platinum. And that brings along her sister, Moon. And I doubt we'll go that deep into things. But that just, like, had my mind racing. Like, there's so many connections that are there. But the manga hasn't really done stuff like that in a hot minute. And honestly, the best place to really bring in a lot of previous characters would have been Alola, because Alola did bring in a lot of previous characters for the battle tree, and we ultimately didn't do that. So I know that I'm getting my hopes up for a lot of things that I know aren't gonna happen. The DLC's almost done. It's time to wrap things up. So the possibilities just seem so fun. And with all the things the manga has done in the past, I think I've gotten a little too spoiled by the way they used to do things, which was not a great method, because it really obviously took a toll on them, on the mangaka, and things ended up becoming so backlogged. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I'd rather take a little bit of things getting pushed back to get a better product, honestly speaking. Because if it would have given Sun and Moon an even better ending, I kinda would have taken it. But I can understand why they try to get things wrapped up in a concise manner. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I hope to see you later. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.